Willie Nelson emerged from the dust of Abbott, Texas, on April 29, 1933, during America's Great Depression. His earliest years were marked by abandonment and absence. Before he could form lasting memories, his mother departed down a dusty road, and soon after, his father remarried and disappeared as well. Willie and his sister Bobby, barely 3 years apart, found themselves raised by their grandparents, Ira and Marl Nelson, in a home where poverty was constant, but love remained present. His grandfather, a blacksmith with weathered hands, believed music possessed healing powers that bread and shelter could not provide. One evening, as Texas twilight painted the horizon, the old man presented Willie with his first guitar. The instrument was too large for the boy's small arms, yet it seemed destined for his soul. The strings still carried warmth from the forge, and iron's scent clung to the wood. When Willie's clumsy fingers found their first notes, they were raw and aching, the sound of a child learning to breathe through loss. Tragedy struck when Willie was 6 years old. Pneumonia claimed his grandfather, the same merciless illness that would later haunt Willie's own lungs decades into the future. The boy watched the man who taught him warmth and rhythm grow silent, counting each pause between breaths, terrified that if he stopped counting, the air would stop forever. The rasp of dying lungs carved itself into his memory, becoming the first song he ever hated. After that loss, every silence sounded like someone dying. By age 7, Willie was no longer living a childhood. He picked cotton under the brutal Texas sun, his small hands cracking and bleeding. Hunger became his constant companion. He worked wherever possible, hauling loads, trimming trees, running errands. At night, he sang in smoke-filled bars under dim yellow bulbs. The crowds barely noticed him, yet he sang as though the world depended on it. By 9, he was performing with the Bohemian Polka Band, his voice trembling but true. Years later, when asked how he survived those years, Willie said quietly that there was always silence, and he filled it with song because no one else was talking to him. As a teenager, the Texas sun continued carving its lessons into his skin. Mornings began before dawn in cotton fields stretching beyond hope. By 14, he was working multiple jobs simultaneously, serving as a tree trimmer, saddle patcher, dishwasher, and part-time radio DJ. He sold encyclopedia sets to impoverished families, carrying $600 book collections through neighborhoods where wallpaper peeled and cupboards echoed empty. It didn't feel right selling words to people who couldn't afford dinner, but bills ignored guilt, and hunger had its own commandments. In his early 20s, Willie packed his meager belongings and drove toward Nashville, chasing a dream that had already broken better men. The city of music didn't open its arms. Producers examined his wrinkled shirt, rough voice, and plain eyes that had witnessed too much, then told him to return when he sounded like someone else. Rejections accumulated like unpaid bills. He sold Family Bible for $100 to buy groceries. The song became a hit for another singer, but the applause and credit belonged to someone else. That cut deeper than hunger ever could. He lived in a rusted trailer on a cemetery's edge, where the living were outnumbered by ghosts. One night after a forgotten show, he walked into the street, not to die, but to see if the world would notice he still existed. Cars swerved around him. Nobody stopped or shouted. Just silence. The same silence that raised him now echoed back like an old hymn with no believers remaining. A truck driver eventually pulled over and handed him a $10 bill for the road. Willie took the money, grateful not for the cash, but for proof that kindness still existed in the world. By 1973, Nashville had closed its chapter on Willie, but Austin was beginning to write its own. The city didn't care about Polish or fame, only truth. Long-haired hippies shared tables with weathered cowboys, and in that unusual mix of smoke and freedom, Willie found the home he'd never had. When he recorded Shotgun Willie, critics called it reckless and unmarketable, too raw for commercial success. But people heard something different: honesty, naked and alive. The record sold 500,000 copies, and the Outlaw sound movement was born. Success arrived quickly, but rest never followed. The road became his only address. He played over 200 shows yearly, his voice carrying through sweat and whiskey, fingers blistered from endless chords. In 1975, Red-Headed Stranger changed everything. The album was bare, haunted, and heartbreakingly quiet. Executives begged him to re-record it. He refused, insisting that if he could hear himself breathe, then it was alive. Critics initially laughed, but 6 months later, it went platinum. Within a year, it was hailed as a masterpiece. Willie's personal life proved equally tumultuous. His first marriage to Martha Matthews in 1952 ended after 10 years of poverty and struggle. They had 3 children together, Lana, Susie, and Billy. But the weight of bills, exhaustion, and too many silent nights eventually broke them apart. His second marriage to Shirley Colley ended in 1970 when she discovered a hospital bill revealing he had a daughter with another woman. That woman was Connie Kupke, whom he married in 1971. They had 2 daughters, Paula and Amy, but by 1988, after 17 years together, they quietly parted ways. In 1986, Willie met Annie D'Angelo while filming Stagecoach. She was a Hollywood makeup artist with calm eyes and a patient heart. They married in 1991 and had 2 sons, Lucas and Micah. For the first time, Willie wasn't running from home, but building one. Annie gave him something rare: peace. After more than 30 years together, Willie often says he finally learned what love really means. It isn't the fire that burns at the beginning, but the warmth that stays when everything else cools. Professional setbacks tested him severely. In 1970, his Ridgetop Ranch burned to the ground. Then, in 1990, the IRS demanded $16.7 million in unpaid taxes. Agents raided his home and seized nearly everything. Instead of filing bankruptcy, he did the only thing he knew: he made an album. The IRS tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories, was sold directly to the public through late-night infomercials. America responded with overwhelming support, buying the record not from pity, but love. Little by little, Willie repaid his debt. Personal tragedies cut deepest. On Christmas Day 1991, his firstborn son Billy died at just 33 years old. Willie later wrote that he'd never experienced anything so devastating. There were no songs deep enough to carry that pain. Every Christmas since has carried a silence no carol can fill. In 2020, his drummer, Paul English, who had been with him since 1955, passed away. 2 years later, his sister Bobby died, taking with her the only living witness to the child Willie once was. Then, in September 2024, Chris Christopherson, his brother-in-arms and fellow Highwayman, was gone. With Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings already departed, Willie became the last Highwayman still keeping time. Behind Willie's gentle smile rages a quiet war fought in every breath he takes. As a 6-year-old in Abbott, he used to trade eggs from his family's chicken coop for Camel cigarettes. That childhood mistake haunted him for decades. Over time, smoke claimed his mother, father, stepmother, and stepfather. By his 80s, the damage was undeniable: emphysema, a collapsed lung, and long nights where breath itself became a stranger. In 2015, he underwent stem cell treatment, hoping to repair the scars. He quit tobacco and turned to medical marijuana for relief, later switching to edibles when smoking anything became too dangerous. Now at 92 years old, Willie lives at his beloved Luck Ranch in Spicewood, Texas, a 700-acre sanctuary valued over $3 million. He owns several properties, including the historic Pedernales Country Club and recording studio, and maintains a modest home in Maui. His cannabis brands, Willie's Remedy and Willie's Reserve, have grown into multi-million-dollar businesses. Financial analysts estimate his net worth between $25 and $30 million, rebuilt from ashes after losing everything to the IRS. In 2024, he released 2 albums, and in 2025, he returned to the road one more time, headlining the Outlaw Music Festival tour alongside Bob Dylan. When the last notes faded in St. Louis, Willie simply smiled and said he'd see everyone down the road. He still walks the fields of Luck Ranch each morning, practices yoga, and eats light organic meals. The lungs that once fought for breath now move slower but stronger. He no longer sings for fame, but for memory, gratitude, and the ghosts walking softly through his songs. Willie Nelson stands as proof that even after the longest road, the song never ends.